Good afternoon to our webinar attendees, panelists, and guests. Welcome to our NOSHCOPS webinar on the salient features of the Department Order 198 series of 2018 with highlights on the qualification of safety officers. The Department Order number 198 is the implementing rules and regulations of the Republic Act 11058, or otherwise known as an act strengthening compliance with occupational safety and health standards and providing penalties for violations thereof. We have a minor changes in our webinar title so that our other attendees who are yet oriented regarding the legal basis on the accreditation requirements may catch up with our discussion. Also, it will not preempt the ongoing revision on the procedural guidelines of the accreditation of OSH practitioner and consultant by the Occupational Safety and Health Center. This webinar will also help our HR professionals, particularly on the qualification of safety officers prior to their appointment as the company's safety officer. We would like to acknowledge our panelists who volunteered to help us in accommodating your questions after the lecture. Finally, we are very honored and grateful to our guest speaker for sharing his invaluable time with us this afternoon, though it is a short notice from NOSHCOP. He will be introduced by our Education Director, Ms. Marnie Pebrada. Once again, magandang hapon sa lahat and mabuhay.
Good afternoon, everyone. Kumusta po? This is another opportunity to learn about safety and health, and we are privileged to have our speaker. Again, who will discuss DO 198-18, as mentioned earlier on by Sir Neil. And he will be also highlighting specifically our concern in terms of what are the qualifications and what are the requirements in terms of accreditation for our safety and health practitioner or consultants in terms of new applications and maybe renewal and leveling up from an OSH practitioner to an OSH consultant. So, ladies and gentlemen, this afternoon, please help me welcome our speaker. He is the Deputy Executive Director of the Occupational Safety and Health Center, detailed at the Dole NCR Quezon City Field Office. Please join me in welcoming Engineer Jose Maria S. Batino, popularly known as Boss Jomar.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Marnie. Thank you, Neil. Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Ano? Yeah, indeed, it was a very short notice. Pero ako naman, game ako sa ganyan. So, the moment Neil called me up, that there were changes on a prior webinar meeting, and the changes would have me as the resource person. So, right away, I said yes. And it's also a commitment on my part, being the Deputy Executive Director of the Occupational Safety and Health Center, and currently on detail with the Dole National Capital Region, I believe it's incumbent upon us to promote safety and health elsewhere. At every opportunity that would arise, then we should be there to promote in more aggressive terms prevention when it comes to occupational safety and health. So, magandang hapon at as mentioned, I would be giving a flavor, although I'm sure you've probably gone over this, the Department Order 198-18, which is the IRR of the law. Yung law natin is RA 11058. The law, in fact, was signed by the President in September 2018. Okay, but the law wanted an IRR, so the statement of the law is that the DOLE would need to come up and issue and implementing rules and regulations within 90 days after effectivity of the law. So the law was signed, I think, August. It took effect sometime September 2018. So 90 days, within 90 days, I think it was December 6 or 7, when DOLE issued the implementing rules and regulations through this Department Order 198-18. Okay, but of course, just like any issuance of DOLE, for it to come into force, it needed to be published. So it was published on January 9, 2019 in the Philippine Star. So 15 days after, I think it was January 25, 2019 when both the law and the IRR came into full force. So since January 2019, January 25, 2019, when DOLE gets to inspect workplaces as to occupational safety and health, the anchorage would be, of course, the law and the implementing rules and regulations. But of course, there's still the OSH standards, and a lot of DOLE issuances kung construction DO 13 pa rin. Ano? So what we need to do right now, since the standards have not yet been amended, and this is how it works, statements that have been captured in the DO 198, in the RA 11058 and DO 198, statements that have been captured. Okay, so DO 198 prevails. Okay, pero there are statements that still exist in the OSH standards. Okay, in various DOLE issuances like DO 13, di ba? So they still remain in effect. Kung hindi sila nasa gian ng DO 198, okay, they still remain in effect. Kasi mapapansin mo, no, as the title specifies it, there would be penalties for willful violations or willful violators. So one of the parameters to penalties, it's compliance to other provisions of those standards, which would mean it's a catch-all phrase. So hindi lang DO 198, hindi lang RA 11058, nandun pa rin OSH standards, nandun ang DO 13, nandun ang iba bang DOLE issuances. If you are in violation of any of those issuances or provisions which are still in effect, then saklaw ka. Saklaw ka pa rin ng penalties for violation under the DO 198. Okay, so now let me share my screen. Okay, so I'm sure everyone knows what Occupational Safety and Health Center is all about, right? The Occupational Safety and Health Center, it's that side of DOLE. And I always say this, it's that side of DOLE. In fact, it's that side of government which works aggressively on promoting prevention of accidents, injuries, illnesses, and even deaths from happening in workplaces. Because in the scheme of things, I'm sure you would agree with me, government can only advocate prevention, right? There is no way that government can do actual prevention, because actual prevention of accidents, injuries, illnesses, and even deaths from happening in workplaces, actual prevention is very much the ballgame of workplaces. So government enters the scene two ways. One is to promote safety and health, one is to promote prevention, the other is to enforce the regulations. Okay, so since January 2019, in effect na tong IRR, itong DOLE DO 198-18. So for those who are aspiring to be safety officers or who are currently safety officers, my advice to you is to appreciate the DO 198 kasi lahat naman ng nasa RA 11058 nandito na nakasakay na lahat sa DO 198. So if I were you, I would focus more on appreciating DO 198, then of course, and all the other DOLE previous and future issuances. Okay, so now let me go to the requirement on first aider. When we were framing the IRR, so one of the concerns were it mentioned in the law, okay, and likewise it was mentioned in the IRR that it's not just Philippine Red Cross anymore. So there would be other providers as authorized by the DOLE secretary. So what happened? This is how DOLE made a realization to this. Since there are already existing providers through the Department of Health, through the Bureau of Fire, and of course the accredited training centers of TESDA providing first aid related training. So nag-exist na sila and of course the Philippine Red Cross. So ang naging attack na lang ng DOLE is to come up with a labor advisory, okay, recognizing as qualified first aiders those who have graduated from first aid trainings from the Department of Health, the Bureau of Fire, and of course from TESDA accredited training institutions, and of course the Philippine Red Cross. So apat na yung sources mo ngayon. Okay, but currently I think there are problems as to recertification, kasi nga the way things are coming, information are coming to us, parang wala pang first aid training na nangyayari. Kasi wala pang online ang Philippine Red Cross. I don't know with DOH, Bureau of Fire, or TESDA. So the problem now is with the recertification. Paano yung mga certified first aider na maglalapse na yung certification. So we tell them, okay, this is how to do it. You write POH, Bureau Fire and Test. Tingnan nyo, no, if there are online trainings that they would be first aid trainings that they would be providing, diba? So kung meron, then you might as well attend it so you can be recertified as qualified first aider. And in its absence, kung wala talaga at na-inspect ka, siguro maganda ipakita mo sa DOLE ito na you've already touched base with these different institutions, but currently walang face-to-face, wala ring online training. Siguro DOLE would be considerate enough, okay, na bigyan bigyan ka ng palugit pa by which you can have your first aider certified. Or another approach to this is there are individuals, you would have to find them. There are individuals who have valid first aid training and certification. You may want to scout for them and hire them even on probably on contractual basis. So that's how to address the current situation if indeed there is absence of first aid training. Kasi yun ang info na nakakarating sa amin. On competency standards, again, when we were discussing this at the level of the technical working group, okay, so valuable ang role ng PRC, the Professional Regulations Commission, and of course, TESDA, no? Okay, because at the moment, malinaw dito sa IRR na to, sa DO 198, if you look at the schedule of violations and the corresponding fees, one of the violations there is that it relates to a certification for skilled workers doing critical operations. Okay, again, if you go by the TESDA website, you'll realize marami na gumagawa ng critical occupations, nasa construction, nasa manufacturing, marami dyan ang kailangan NC2 since explicit dito sa 198 na sinabi niya, merong penalty kung hindi certified yung skill worker mo. So tingnan nyo ngayon, you would have to go by the TESDA list and look at your individuals who are doing critical occupations and look at the website of TESDA if there is a corresponding TESDA NC2 or NC3. If there exists a corresponding NC2 or NC3, the next best thing to do kung walang NC2 or NC3, yung skilled worker mo, is to link them up with TESDA so assessment can be done and the necessary national certificates can be accorded to your skilled worker. Kasi dito mas binigyan talaga ng halaga yung existence ng national certificate for critical occupations. Ngayon, what's the responsibility of TESDA here? So TESDA would need to look at their mobilization of training and assessment, di ba? Kasi nga marami na nga kailangan. They would have to be ready. They would have to be ready in the event na merong mga requests sa kanila for assessment. Then they would have their assessors on standby, so those in critical occupations can be assessed. Then another thing that TESDA would need to look into is that currently we're also being beset by skills that are already here, skills that are already happening, but to which we don't have competency standards on. Like for example, when we talk of rope access or rappelling, nangyayari na, di ba? May mga situations na sa construction na hindi ka na nagse-set up ng mga temporary facilities, nira-rappel na lang yan or rope access. So the point is this. Internationally, I would surmise there are competency standards on rope access. Pero nationally, wala eh. So the message to TESDA again is to look into this skills which are already happening. Okay, then analyze the skills. Okay, come up with competency standards and assessment protocols. Then for the PRC, okay, the message is for the PRC is that look at the trainings of safety officers. They might be credited. Sinabi dito, baka pwedeng sa continuing education part, ma-credit yung mga training ng mga safety officers. Then for covered workplaces, I think the statement is very clear where there are people working, there are operations. It's by and large a workplace. It could be a satellite office, a main office, okay? It could be a branch then, okay? All of these are covered by this department order. Okay, before I go any further, malinaw ba? Nakikita niyo yung frame saka yung malinaw yung audio?
Yes, yes, Sir John.
Okay, okay. Anytime na medyo lumabo, sabihin niyo lang ha. Okay.
Yeah, yes, Sir John. Thank
Okay,
you.
so in the past, we have our categories of establishments would run this way, right? We have non-hazardous, hazardous, and highly hazardous. Noon pa man, sinasabi na namin yan eh. Wala namang establishment na non-hazardous. Even if you look at offices, even if you look at business process outsourcing, call centers, they would just have office setting. Pero the stress, di ba? Psychosocial is so high. So sinasabi namin, matagal na namin gustong buwagin yung pagkakaroon ng category na non-hazardous. So finally it happened. And it happened in a good way that it's now dynamic. Risk-based na ang categories ng establishment. So low, medium, high risk. But the question is this, who gets to categorize, di ba? Kayo mismo, the establishment, through the safety committee, through the safety officers, would need to perform HIRAC, hazard identification, risk assessment, and control. Kaya nga integrated ang HIRAC sessions, even for SO1 training, SO2, and SO3 training, both for boss and cost, integrated dyan. Why? Because kailangan matutunan ng establishment, lalo na ng ating safety officers at safety committee, how to perform HIRAC. So we would know, we can determine, the establishment can determine where they are in the spectrum of risk. Low, medium, or high ba sila? Kasi whenever a labor inspector comes in, okay, the workplace would be inspected on the basis of the risk category and the number of employees. So among the first few things that a DOLE labor inspector will ask from you once he or she gets to inspect your workplace is, where is your risk assessment? Okay, kasi nga, on the basis of your risk assessment, doon kanya inspection and exact compliance on from you, okay, on occupational safety and health standards. But often, okay, naging helpful din, ang IRR na to. Why? Because often it gave you an idea. It enumerated a list of sectors where there are potentially high-risk activities, which would now mean, okay, a DOLE inspector, okay, would look at your sector. If you belong to any of this sector, there's a high chance that ang category mo is risk assessment. Ang category mo is high risk. Okay. Let me take construction as an example. No matter how faithful you do risk assessment in construction and even in the integration of your preventive programs, at the end of the day, you'll always realize construction is high risk, di ba? So dito sa point na to, binibigyan tayo ng idea. Ito yung mga high risk. So what would these sectors need to do? Come up with preventive programs, di ba? Come up with a good risk assessment, come up with preventive programs. Hopefully, you get to slide in a lower risk category. Kasi since dynamic yung categorization natin, you can actually slide from a lower to a lower risk category given your preventive programs. So in 2019, I think this came out September 2019, DOLE issued Labor Advisory Number 4, Series of 2019, Guide for Compliance of Establishments. So the establishment shall be responsible in determining its own level of classification based on HIRAC. So binigay sa inyo nitong regulation na to ang responsibility to perform HIRAC and to determine where you are in the spectrum of risk. Generally speaking, saan ka? Low, medium, or high? Okay, so imminent danger. Okay, so okay, there's a definition, but practically, when do we exactly say that a situation is imminent danger? We always say there are two simultaneous situations that should exist. For one to determine that that situation is indeed imminent danger. One is high probability, right? High probability, definitely mangyayari aksidente. Next is high severity. Pag nangyari aksidente, wala mang mamatay, merong masasaktan. Di ba? Merong masasaktan. Okay, so when that's the situation, then that is imminent danger. So I think you all know, in a situation of imminent danger, and of course on a situation of fatal accident, DOLE gets to issue work stoppage order. So in the same slant, okay, kapag imminent danger sa isang workplace, do not wait for DOLE. Okay, itong DO 198 na to, nagset sa iyo ng opportunity, nagbigay sa iyo ng opportunity to issue stoppage order. Ikaw na mismo, ha? Kaya establishments would need to determine, okay, through, again, the risk assessment, of course, through the expertise of the safety and committee members and the safety officer, what are the imminent danger situations, possible imminent danger situations in the workplace. And when it arises, when it happens, or when it shows itself, okay, there should be stoppage. Kaya nga mapapansin nyo, one of the new character of this DO 198 as to the responsibility of the safety officer is the issuance of stoppage order when necessary. So nagturo na tong department order na to, tinuro niya na yung safety officer as the person responsible to issue stoppage when necessary. Again, what do we mean by when necessary? It only means imminent danger. Okay. So again, definition lang naman, low risk, medium. Okay, micro and small business enterprises, it was defined here. Why? The original intention was to come up with something different, a set of standards for micro and small enterprises. That was the original intention. But when the IRR was being framed up, I mean, when we were framing the IRR, and of course, sa level ng TWG, mahirap i-extract eh. Ano lang bang set of standards ang applicable sa micro and small na hindi applicable sa medium and large, and vice versa. So ang naging direction na lang is for this set of standards, itong D198, to be applicable, okay, to all workplaces. Okay, occupational health personnel. So who are our occupational health personnel? These are our first aiders, our occupational health nurse, occupational health dentist, and occupational health physician. So again, ang first aider and training galing sa apat na ahensya which I have mentioned. Occupational health nurse, until now, let me be clear on this, there's still just one provider of BOSH for nurses, yung tinatawag nating ONAP, Occupational Health Nurses Association of the Philippines. So ibig sabihin, if you designate someone, a registered nurse, on top of being a registered nurse, pag dinesignate mo siyang OH nurse, it goes without saying, the guy should have completed the 48-hour training from the ONAP, Occupational Health Nurses Association of the Philippines. So occupational health dentist, okay, in the past, prior to this regulation, in the past, magkasama sa training ang dentist sa physician, OSH training nila. BCom yan, basic course in occupational medicine, which you can get two ways. Either you get it from the UP College of Public Health, or you get it from PICOM, the Philippine College of Occupational Medicine. Noon magkasama sila prior to this IRR, to this department order. Pero hiniwalay na sila dito. Sinabi dito, dentist, occupational health dentist, pwede ka nang umattend. Ang pwedeng attendan mo na lang ay yung 40-hour BOSH. So kung mag-engage ka na occupational health dentist, okay, pwedeng BOSH, yung 40-hour BOSH na lang ang hanapin. Okay, occupational safety and consultant. So nano pa rin, there's still accreditation for practitioners and consultants. So one important aspect of this DO 198, tinanggal na niya na requirement ang pagiging OSH practitioner para maging safety officer ka. Okay, in the past kasi, okay, for those who are long-time practitioners already and who have become consultants, I'm sure you still remember, in the past, bago ka maging safety officer sa isang highly hazardous to highly hazardous workplace, given the size of employment, dapat accredited OSH practitioner ka, di ba? So dito nawala na yon, nawala na. The way safety officer has been defined, hindi na niya, it's not already anymore in consideration of having an accreditation. But the system of accreditation still exists. Nando pa rin ang Occupational Safety and Health Center, okay, which handles or takes care of the accreditation system. So nothing stops you if you still want to pursue accreditation. Okay, but I think even though at the moment they're revising the procedural guidelines, I believe they would maintain for you to be an accredited OS consultant, dadaan ka pa rin for several years as an accredited practitioner. So at the moment, in the absence of revised guidelines, ang hinahanap is 4 na taon. 4 na taon ka, you should have been at least 4 years as accredited OS practitioner before you even become eligible to apply for accreditation as OS consultant. And that is still with the other requirements, and of course with the process. Meron pa ring interview yan. Okay. Okay, personal protective equipment. Okay, so I think the standards is quite clear on this. I mean, this DO198 is quite clear by saying that PP should be tested by DOLE. No? So in the Philippines, in the whole country, there's only one organization which performs the performance testing, which conducts the performance testing of personal protective equipment. At yan ang Occupational Safety and Health Center. So, but of course, the line of testing that they have, okay, are only for safety shoes, hard hats, lanyards, full body harness, electric gloves. Ano pa ba ako na-miss? Safety shoes, hard hats, goggles and spectacles, lanyards, full body harness, and I think and electric gloves. Ano? Okay, so which would mean if you are procuring any of the 6 items which I've mentioned, or the 6 items which I have mentioned, you require suppliers to present to you the test results issued by the OSHC. And of course, in the test results, it should clearly state na pasado yung samples. Otherwise, you do not buy from them. So, yun ang hahanapin mo sa supplier. If your supplier cannot present to you test results na pasado and issued by the OSHC on the 6 items which I mentioned, huwag kang bumili. Okay? Bawal ka nang bumili. In other words, kasi sinabi na dito, dapat na-test. But for items outside of the 6 which I mentioned, let's say N95 mask, okay, dust mask, for example, dust mask. You're procuring dust mask. Okay, at the moment there's still no testing on the part of OSHC for dust mask. So wala pang testing, wala pang testing protocols ang OSHC, wala pang kinoconduct na test. So which would mean you need to get from a third party or from the manufacturer, okay, a certification na pasado yung kanyang PPE, yung kanyang dust mask, okay, sa standards. Okay, and for safety officers, you may want to review the different standards for specific PPEs kasi sinabi naman ng OS standards natin and still exists, nasa Rule 1080 pa rin yan, na sinasabi pagka itong PPE na to, let's say mask, ano yung ANSI equivalent or pagkaibang PPE, ASTM. So, titingnan nyo pa rin, ibabangga nyo pa rin doon sa required ng OS standards kung anong international standards ang na-mention doon. For those PPEs which you are procuring outside of the 6 items which I've mentioned. Okay, safety and audit, you need to do this on a regular basis. Safety and Health Committee, so lahat even the smaller establishments would need to come up with the structure of a Safety and Health Committee. And Safety and Health program, so lahat na, no, since 2019, lahat na ng establishments, okay, given the OS program template which is uploaded to the DOLE website, kailangan i-download mo yun, use the template to submit to DOLE your Occupational Safety and Health program. Okay, let's look at the definition of the safety officer. Any employee or officer of the company trained by the DOLE or DOLE accredited training organization and tasked by the employer to implement an OS program. So which would mean from SO1, Safety Officer 1, Safety Officer 2, Safety Officer 3, Safety Officer 4. Ang training niyan would either, ang occupational safety training niyan, once prescribed, okay, would either come from the Occupational Safety and Health Center or from its accredited training organizations. Okay, so at the moment, I think they're close to 100, no? There's close to 100 as to the number of accredited safety training organizations. Pero the challenge now is accrediting the online providers, ha? Kasi naglabas ng separate ng issuance ang OSHC, okay, as to interim guidelines on accreditation for online purposes. So hindi ko lang alam kung ilan na, no? But of course, they should be displayed or uploaded to their website kung ilan na ang na-accredit nila providing online trainings, lalo na yung mga safety trainings, lalo na yung prescribed. So for SO1, the training is actually 10 hours. Okay, there's a course outline for this. Ano? Again, downloadable from the DOLE website. So dapat si SO1 mo nakakumpleto ng 8 hours na yan. Okay, plus 2 hours of trainers training topics. Okay. You may want to download from the OSHC website. They actually have a revised learning roadmap on this, ano, whereby biniyak na yung 10 hours na yan into 2 days. And for if any of you are representing safety training organizations, i-check nyo lang. Okay, merong learning roadmap yan na itong SO1 training, you need to deliver it in 2 days. Naka-upload yan sa OSHC website. Then if you are designated as SO2, okay, then your training, if you're in a sector which is non-construction, okay, 40 hours training, and that's the boss training. If you are in a sector in construction, if you're part of the construction industry, then 40-hour course. So yun pa rin, okay, although na-revise na rin, as far as I know, ang boss na-revise na yan. Meron ng learning roadmap na pinakuwalan, Occupational Safety Center as to boss, and there is also integration of 2 hours of trainers training topics, diba? So meron din, nilagyan na nila yung boss ng trainers training topics. I don't know with caution of, but I think that's also the direction. So it still remains. If you are to be designated as SO2, Safety Officer 2 in a non-construction establishment, boss graduate ka. Kung construction cost. Then SO3, okay, again, there are situations whereby an SO3 is required. Hindi lang SO2, or minsan it's a combination. Isang SO2, isang SO3. So if SO3 ang requirement, okay, so on top of the boss or cost, the SO3, okay, should have completed additional 48 hours of advanced or specialized post training. So pag sinabi ng 48 hours of advanced or specialized post training, and pagka ganito sinabi na to, it has been prescribed. So ibig sabihin, yung 48 hours na yan, you have to take it either from OSHC or from a DOLE accredited training organizations, di ba? So advanced, we're looking here at mga advanced courses, loss control management, safety program audit, specialized courses. It depends siguro kung specialized. It depends kung ano yung sector mo. Like if you are in production of paints, mga pintura, then you probably would have training on work environment measurement or on GHS, globally or industrial hygiene. So titignan nyo, no? Kung construction ka naman, your specialized training would be, let's say, on working at heights, okay, specialized training on heavy equipment. So yun, so ganun niya nilatag yung requirements for SO3. At sinabi niya dito at least 2 years of experience. Okay, as to experience, okay, it will be the responsibility of the company to determine whether the 2 years of experience is fit. Okay, that type of experience or kind of experience is fit to the company, to the sector, di ba? Like for example, ang experience niya ay construction. Okay? More than 2 years man yan. Okay. Ang ina-applyan niya sa iyo, SO3, isa kang manufacturing. Ngayon, company, you need to determine, yan bang experience niya sa safety and sa construction, pwede ba yan dyan sa manufacturing? So, company needs to evaluate this. Why? Because there's a labor advisory also which states that the HR, human resource, you would have to certify before company gets to designate the safety officer. HR is certifying mo. Is this person a good fit Okay, na-meet ba niya yung credentials, yung qualification ng pagiging SO1, SO2, or SO3, or SO4? You need to certify before the company gets to designate the individual as safety officer. Because comes a point of inspection. Dole will look for these documents. Nasaan yung designation mo? As na ikaw ang SO1, SO2, or SO3, or SO4, nasaan yung certification issued by HR na ikaw ay qualified? So again, ibinigay ng regulation na to sa company ang pagkilatis, okay? Ang pagkilatis whether a certain individual is fit to be their safety officer, di ba? Kasi there are so many occasions, there are so many situations whereby minsan pagka nandun na yung bolilyaso, that's the only point you realize hindi pala qualified o hindi fit pala yung safety officer mo, di ba? So early on, before you even get to designate the safety officer, dapat na-assess mo na ang credentials niya at experience niya kung siya ay gusto mong i-designate as safety officer. And let me also be clear on this, because I've heard it too many times in trainings na sinasabi nila pag nakagraduate ka ng course, isa ka ng ganap na safety officer. Hindi ho, pag nakagraduate ka ng training, completion lang. So completion certificate lang ang meron ka. Kailan ka magsisimulang maging safety officer? Kapag ikaw ay na-designate na, when the company gave you that designation or gives you that designation that you are indeed the safety officer, that is only the opportune time you get to be one. You get to be a safety officer. Okay, so SO4, so pag SO4, look, the credentials become, in a sense, more, on top of the basic training of 40 hours, there's additional of 80 hours of advanced specialist training and 320 hours, okay, of OSH-related training or experience. So ito na yung bubuunuin mo, kung ikaw ay de-designate na SO4. Kung ikaw ay de-designate na SO4 ng company, pero again, lilinawin ko lang, even with the current guidelines of accreditation, kahit hawak mo na yung credentials ng SO4, meron kang 40 hours na training, 80 hours of advanced special training, more than 320 hours of post-related experience. Lahat na yan nasa iyo. Pero hindi ka dumaan sa pagiging practitioner. So ito, the question is, pwede ka bang mag-apply as consultant? Hindi. Kasi ang requirement pa rin with the current guidelines, dapat dumaan ka muna sa pagiging practitioner for at least 4 years. Okay. Malinaw, kasi minsan ganun ang idea. So ihiwalay mo yung sa accreditation dito. Ang sinasabi lang dito, SO3, ide-designate ka if you have these credentials. SO4, ide-designate ka SO4 if you have such credentials. But this is not in any way connected. Hindi mo to basta pwedeng ibangga sa accreditation. Okay. So ganun yan, kasi accreditation itself would have its requirements and its process. Okay, signages, okay, worker, basic definition, ang workers o seminar. So mandatory, so meron tayong mandatory workers o seminar. So it's 8 hours. Again, there's a separate course outline for this. And I'm sure you've already gone over that outline. Saka na-conduct na siguro to, ang safety officer nyo, because sa sinabi ng labor advisory, the mandatory workers o seminar may be conducted by the safety officer of the establishment or any DOE accredited certified practitioner or consultant. So you if you want an external resource person, let's say you have the resources to pay for the guy, you can hire an external resource person through a safety accredited practitioner or consultant to provide this 1 day mandatory or seminar for your employees. Pero ang gusto lang ng regulation, simple lang. Kung sino yung designated safety officer mo, yun na ang mag-conduct. Okay, yun nga pala, let me just go back to the credentials of the SO safety officers. Those are minimum requirements. Pag sinabi natin SO3, kailangan mo 2 years of experience. Yun lang ang minimum na sinasabi nitong regulation. Pero let's say, ako yung kumpanya, I want to add more to the experience. Gusto ko 4 years yan o 5 years na safety-related experience. I can do so. Ako naman yung kumpanya. Siya naman nag-apply sa akin as SO3. So itong sinet lang ng regulation na to are minimum requirements. If companies would want to put this on a notch higher, it all depends on the company. But for purposes of compliance, ito yung minimum requirements. Tapos yung mandatory OSHA seminar na to for all employees, it can be done on staggered basis. You can do it online, you can do it on staggered basis. If you cannot do it online for 8 hours, pwede mo namang utay-utayin 2 hours first week, 2 hours second week, 2 hours third week, fourth week, another 2 hours until such time you are able to complete that 8 hours. Ang gusto lang ng DOLE, wag matagal. Wag namang ilang buwan bago mo na natapos yung mandatory 8 hours or seminar for employees. Okay, workers' right to know. I think the intention of Section 5 is that we would not want to come to a situation whereby kaya lang na-aksidente yung worker or yung workers. Why? Because they didn't know how to protect themselves. Why? Because there is lack of information. So workers, they have the right to know. Diba? They have the right to know if they're exposed to hazards, what would be the precautions. If it so requires that they need to be trained, then dapat sagutin ng kumpanya ang training. Diba? So ang gusto lang ng Section 5, ibigay natin yung mga information na yan for workers to be able to protect themselves. And if there are information, like for example, sa high risk, like construction, from time to time, workers would tend to be complacent. And at times, they also forget all this information. Okay, even for some people handling chemicals, di ba? Minsan nakakalimutan nila yung information on the STS, ganun. So, if ang sinabi dito for establishments in the high risk category, there should be a quarterly provision of information. So selective lang naman to. Siguro you would have to select that specific set of workers and that specific set of information that they need to be reoriented on a quarterly basis. Okay, workers' right to refuse to unsafe work. I think this is something universal in a sense. All of us, di ba? Hindi lang naman ordinary worker. All of us, we can invoke refusal. Okay, we can invoke refusal if we are in an imminent danger situation. So the intention of this statement, is to give workers that empowerment. Why? Because in many situations, worker would just tend to keep silent, right? Even though they're exposed to some risk, they're exposed to imminent danger, their priority would still to ensure that they don't go out of job. So what would be their behavior? Hindi na lang sila magsasalita, di ba? Mag-iingat sila, they'll keep mum about it. But the point is this, it's an imminent danger situation. It could harm anyone. So this section would want workers to invoke refusal. Invoke refusal, okay, when there is imminent danger situation. So nilinaw naman, the only point that a worker can invoke refusal if there is existence, as to safety note, if there is existence of an imminent danger situation. So again, dapat malinaw. So the responsibility of the workplace is to clear things on this. Linawin natin, and then by imminent danger situation. So when it arises, okay, workers would be confident enough to invoke refusal. So for as to the responsibility of workplaces, you need to act on the refusal. You need to act on the refusal. Wag mong deadmahin, Kasi look, if kung yan ay hindi mo papansinin, imminent danger nga at nangyari ang aksidente, then DOLE ang papasok dyan to investigate and of course issue work stoppage. But if it comes to a point, you are not really that sure whether it's imminent danger or not. Let's say, to the point na nagtatalo na kayo ng employee, ikaw, sasabihin mo as manager, hindi imminent danger yan. Insist ng worker, imminent danger yan. So that's the time you need to bring in DOLE to determine whether it's an imminent danger situation or not. But let me ask you, will you do that? Really, will you go to the extent of calling in DOLE for DOLE to determine whether it's an imminent danger situation or not? Diba? So hindi na lang siguro. Why? Because you have your safety officers, you have your safety committee, you're in the best situation to determine, the processes and everything. You're in the best situation to determine whether such a situation is imminent danger or not. So at the point that it's imminent danger, you issue stoppage, you can actually transfer the worker to a safer workstation. Diba? Pwede mo naman siya i-transfer para tuloy din ang sahod at trabaho niya. I-transfer mo siya. Okay, you only bring him back to such workstation when it's already safe. So the responsibility of look at the way the sections are formulated here, no? Okay, there is a corresponding right on the part of the worker, but it translates to a responsibility on the part of the employer. So responsibility ng employer to ensure na ang worker is empowered to report or invoke refusal when it comes to imminent danger. Okay, workers' right to report accidents. So let me just read the statement. Okay, it says here, workers and the representative shall have the right to report accidents, dangers, occurrences, and hazards to the employer, comma, to the DOLE and to other concerned government agencies which would have jurisdiction. So let's just analyze the statement. Okay, workers' right to report accidents, dangers, occurrences. Since it says right, so let me ask you the question. Pwede bang hindi i-report or dapat i-report? I mean, is this right similar to a fundamental right? Like yung right of suffrage, di ba? Yung right of suffrage, pwede kang bumoto, pwede kang hindi bumoto. Pag hindi ka bumoto, nothing bad happens to you, nothing bad happens to your family, nothing bad happens to your community. Sa kandidato, it's just one vote. It may not even alter the outcome. That's fundamental right. But is this something fundamental na pwedeng hindi gawin o dapat gawin? Di ba? So, the way we see it, although we invoke workers' rights, okay, kasi nga, I mean, when you formulate provisions, okay, you also need to be careful to your choice of words, di ba? So, pagdating kasi sa workers, di ba, it's more important to tell them it's the right, di ba? Pero, well, in fact, pag binasa mo to, pag in-analyze mo, it's really a responsibility to report. Diba? Kasi kung hindi niya i-report yan, kung hindi siya ang ma-aksidente, yung co-worker niya ma-aksidente. Anytime soon, merong ma-aksidente kung hindi magre-report siya. Saka when a labor inspector comes in and the labor inspector detects that there are risks that exist, okay, within the workstation of the worker, tatanungin ni labor inspector si worker, na-report mo na ba to? Sasabihin ng worker, sir, wala naman kaming reporting dito. Who gets to, I mean, the labor inspector definitely gets to issue the violation. But to whom is the violation addressed? It's always to the employer, di ba? So, again, the translation of this is that the employer needs to ensure that there is a reporting mechanism. Okay, so para ma-exercise ng worker yung right to report, there should be a reporting mechanism. Then let me again read the statement. Workers and the representative shall have the right to report accidents, dangerous occurrences, and hazards to the employer, to the DOLE, and to other government agencies which would have jurisdiction. Ngayon, if I were to recast the statement, okay, I will do it this way. Workers and the representative shall have the right to report accidents, dangerous occurrences, and hazards to the following. Diba? To the employer, number one, to the following. Number one, to the employer. Number two, to DOLE. Number three, to other government agencies which would have jurisdiction. So what am I saying here? It's practically an enumeration. At sinasabi dito, ang unang pagre-report, the first crack at reporting should be addressed to the employer. So the regulations would want it that way. I-report mo muna sa employer. Why? Because the employer should be able to provide the solution. DOLE will not be able to provide the solution. I-report mo man sa DOLE yan. DOLE gets to inspect the workplace, gets to call on the employer, the employees, di ba? Sasabihin, ito yung mga infractions, ito yung mga violations, o employer, i-correct mo yan. Apply corrective actions, di ba? So, umabala yung proseso. So, to lessen the timeline for the implementation of corrective actions, ang gusto ng regulation, i-report na kagad sa employer. If you go directly to DOLE, let's say there's this worker who goes directly to DOLE at ni-report niya, dito sa aming workplace, unsafe dito, may ganito, may risk. Okay. Ang first question din ng DOLE, na-report mo na sa employer yan, di ba? So sasabihan din yung worker, i-report mo muna sa employer yan. Dapat bigyan niya kagad ng solusyon yan. Okay, PPE, I've already gone over this. So, kailangan part siya ng separate pay item siya. Ganun din sa construction, di ba? I think it's under Section 17 of DO 13 na lahat ng cost ng safety and construction is an integral part of the construction project and separate pay item. And that is inclusive of the cost of personal protective equipment. So even the replenishment, kasi there are times may mga questions paano, let's say, kung nasira na ng worker yung PPE, yung bang pagpalit, sagot pa rin ng company? Yes, sagot pa rin. Rule 1080 ng OSH standards, ano sinabi doon, di ba? PPE shall be provided at the expense of the employer. Sa DO 13, part ng project ko. So any which way you analyze it, hindi dapat manggaling sa worker, di ba? In fact, if there's a situation na nag-inspect ang DOLE, na-inspect niya, and I mean, after validation and everything, there's true to it na yung cost ng PPE dinideduct sa salaries ng workers. And sometimes it happens, right? If DOLE inspector finds it out, most of the time, DOLE gets to issue 2 violations. One is the violation in the standards on PPE. It could be, let's say, dito Section 8, sa DO 13, Section 6. Okay, sa OSH standards, Rule 1080. Okay, so, yun ang issue violation. And the second violation is inappropriate deduction. Di ba? Kasi ang pwede mo lang i-deduct from the salaries of workers would be counterparts on SSS, PhilHealth Pag-ibig, taxes, di ba? Withholding taxes at legitimate deductions kung may loan sila sa inyo. Okay, but not the cost of PPE. Okay, so the DOLE ruling would be simple. Ibalik mo sa worker yung amount na dinidak mo dahil binayaran niya yung personal protective equipment. Walang kulang, walang sobra. Ngayon, based on this regulation, dapat maibalik mo in 3 days time. Kasi ang timeline natin sa lahat ng violation ng personal protective equipment, based on the penalties, dapat 3 days lang. 3 days mag-comply ka. On the 4th day, okay, DOLE will impose the penalty. Okay, so, but how do we advocate this to workers? Okay, ito naman, the way we advocate this to workers is in this manner. We tell workers, hindi libreng, it's not really free personal protective equipment. It's free use of personal protective equipment. Meaning, the ownership stays with the provider, with the company, with the contractor. It stays with them, the ownership of the PPE. So, worker, if you get to lose your PPE or you damage your PPE and it's your fault. Na-damage siya not because of wear and tear. Okay, na-damage siya dahil maling paggamit. Hard that pinupok mo sa hard object na basag. Goggles, bawal iuwi. May company policy, bawal iuwi. Inuwi pa rin, nawala. So, there should be due process. Okay, in the due process, okay, it points towards the direction of the culpability of the worker. Then, what has been lost? Dahil kasalanan ng worker, what has been damaged dahil sinadya ng worker, they become legitimate deductions. I mean, they should be paid. Bayaran, they become legitimate deductions. Okay, so Section 12 on Occupational Safety and Health Program. So, regardless of the size, regardless of the nature of risk, there is only one OSH program template. So, you download the template. I don't know if there's still any company which has not submitted their OSH program, dapat i-download nyo na, i-submit nyo na sa DOLE. So, it's just one template, regardless of the number of employees, regardless of the risk category. Although, there are 3 items there. If you go by the OSH template, there are 3 items there in asterisk. I think one deals with excavation, one deals with confined space, and another, I forgot the third one. So if it's not applicable to you, don't answer it. Mas malamang sa mga high-risk establishments. So. Okay, so the OSH program shall be submitted to DOLE, which would have jurisdiction over the location of the establishment. It could be the DOLE regional, the DOLE district or provincial office. But there's actually an e-application. Okay, I think there's an e-application. Alam ko sa DOLE NCR, merong e-application. You submit your OSH program online. Even CSHP, even I think CSHP, there's an e-application whereby your construction safety and health program can be submitted online. Again, it didn't say really as to the frequency of submission. Hindi naman niya sinabi this should be annual. Okay, the closest thing na sinabi as to being annual is as to budget. Okay, kasi sinabi niya, Ang sinabi niya dito, okay, okay, hindi nakalagay sa frame ha. Ang sinabi niya dito, ang budget ng OS program, the budget of the OS program of the company would have to come from the OPEX, operational expenses, which is annually driven. Annually driven ang OPEX niyo, di ba? So which would mean every year, you need to have budget for your OS program. But it didn't say na annually mag-submit ka ng OS program. Sinabi lang dito, annually i-review mo, evaluate mo. And if there are revisions from your end, let's say, because of a new technology, okay, na-revise yung OS program mo, okay, so you need to submit to DOLE a revised OS program using the template. Or if DOLE by na-review ng DOLE. Sabihin natin na-review ng DOLE OS program mo and DOLE feels na kulang at kailangan or there are portions that you need to revise, that's the only time do you need to submit a revised program. But kung nag-submit ka na, wala namang sinabi ng DOLE na i-revise mo at hindi naman nababago. Hindi naman nababago yung configuration ng OS program mo, then every year yun pa rin ang program mo, then there is no need for another submission. Okay, but of course, the budget as it states should be annually driven. Okay, the company shall submit a copy of the OS program to the DOLE regional, provincial, field, or satellite office. So, just look for the e-app. Alam ko merong e-application ng DOLE as to the submission. So, sinabi dito, a duly signed company commitment to comply with OS requirements together with the company OS program using the prescribed template. There's an annex here. There's an annex to the OS program template. It is a commitment which the owner or the manager needs to sign. So sinabi dito, if you submit to DOLE with the signed commitment and you use the prescribed template, shall be considered approved upon submission. So yung OS program na sinabit nyo sa DOLE, OS program for the company, okay, it does not require approval from DOLE. Sinabi, if you use the template, prescribed template, the commitment is signed, shall be considered approved upon submission, except for CSHP. So there's a different process for CSHP. It requires approval. So there's a one-page approval or disapproval. Those who have had experiences with submitting and their CSHP, I'm sure, you know that there's a one-page approval or disapproval notice coming from the DOLE regional office. So ang CSHP, kailangan i-approve pa rin siya. Okay, going back to that labor advisory 4-19, okay, the company may opt to use the OS program template. So binibigyan ng mga, you're given leeway whether or not to use the OS program template prepared by DOLE, what's uploaded to the DOLE website. Okay, it's up to you. If you feel that template is enough, it could cover your OS program, then use the template. But if you feel you need to have an own template, hindi naman kayo pinagbawalan to use to deviate from the template that is uploaded to the DOLE. Yun nga lang, if you deviate from the template, okay, of course, DOLE would need to look at the deviations, okay, para malaman niya kung nasunod pa rin in practical sense yung requirements ng OS standards natin. Okay, so ayan, the company shall review and evaluate the OS program at least once a year. Okay, so Safety and Health Committee, no matter how small the structure of the organization is or the structure of the entity is, there should still be a Safety and Health Committee for small establishments. So the company owner or the managers, which your person, and as always, the safety officer is the secretary and at least one worker as member. If the company is really small, sinabi rin dito, the company owner or manager can also be the first aider. So pwedeng siya na rin ang umattend ng training and to be the first aider. Pero walang sinabi dito na siya rin yung safety officer. Kasi dapat wala yung safety officer. Hindi naman siya pwedeng siya yung chairperson, siya rin yung secretary. So dapat merong hiwalay na safety officer. Okay, for regularly sized workplaces or establishments, so this is the typical structure. Okay, again, the owner is representative or her representative is the chairperson, the safety officer is the secretary. Automatic members would be the occupational health personnel, and of course, there should be members coming from the workers or there should be workers representatives to the committee. Again, how do we select the workers representative to the committee? If the establishment is unionized, of course, union gets to nominate, di ba? Merong order from the union na si Mr. Ganito, si Ma'am Ganito is the representative to the committee. If the establishment is not unionized, then of course the employees would have to vote amongst themselves and elect who will represent them in the safety committee. Ngayon, your safety committee now, if you have service contractors, let's say you have janitorial services, you've hired janitorial services, security services. So yung safety officer nila, ni janitorial at ni security services, or you have food concessionaires sa canteen, okay? Sila ay uupo rin as member ng principal's safety and health committee, okay? And that's your way of also ensuring that your programs get to be cascaded to the service contractors through their safety officers. Okay, then let me also tell you of the concept of joint OS committee. Kailan ka ba nagkakaroon ng joint OS committee? On a situation, let's say mall, commercial complex, na ang tenants mo are entities, establishments ang tenants mo, hindi residente. Hindi condominium. Pero ang tenant mo ay establishments sa isang mall, sa isang commercial complex. Then the admin, the building building administrator the administration would have to come up with a joint OS committee. So the building ad is the chairperson. The safety officer of building ad is the secretary. Then the member entities, meaning the entities, the tenant entities in the mall or in the complex, at least two of them would serve as members. Two of their safety officers would serve as members of the Joint Safety Committee, and also two workers representatives coming from any of the entity tenants in the building or in the facility. Then of course the building administrator would have to submit reports to DOLE as to the Joint OS Committee. Okay, section 14, and if you go by ABC, these are just faithful extractions from the OS standards. So ang isang nabago lang dito is letter D, whereby sinabi na, okay, if you designate the safety officer, make sure that among his or her functions, and the guy should be able to carry this on, is to issue work stoppage when necessary, based on the requirements and procedures provided by the OS standards. So you should select the right officer. Why? Because you will give him or her this responsibility to issue work stoppage when there is imminent danger. So what's the importance of section 14? It gives you that mechanism. It gives you now that mechanism to have an in-house opportunity for stoppage, para hindi na to mag-mature into a more serious accidents. Kasi kung hindi ma-stoppage yan, in-house level, then DOLE, pag nangyari aksidente at serious yan o fatal, then DOLE pa ang mag-i-issue ng stoppage. So what section 14 is telling you, have that mechanism, have your safety officer issue work stoppage para hindi na mangyari aksidente, for you to avoid a situation na mangyari aksidente in a situation whereby DOLE gets to issue a work stoppage order. Okay, so again, going back to that labor advisory, okay, the safety officer, ito yung sinasabi ko kanina, the safety officer shall be certified by the company's HR based on qualification. So pag, okay, HR, you have additional responsibility. Kaya my advice to HR, you may want to also attend cost training. If you're HR in a construction company, you might as well attend cost training also. Why? Because you will issue a certification based on the individual's qualification, and for you to have that confidence to issue the certification, I think you also need to know, okay, the ins and outs of occupational safety na, di ba? So I think marami na, these days marami ng HR na umattend na rin ng boss or ng cost training, or yung SO1 training. The appointment of safety officer shall be issued by the company. So I don't know if it's appointment or designation. I mean, I don't know. Companies would have different protocols on this. It could be a designation letter. It could be an appointment letter or whatever you. If only to say na si Mr. Ganito, si Ma'am Ganito is the designated SO1, SO2, SO3, or SO4. Okay, so this is now the matrix. Okay, so when Dole gets to inspect you, I mean, this is how Dole will look into the situation. Okay. When we say number of workers, it has to be total. It has to be total. Okay. Okay. And it has to be on a per shift basis as well. Okay. Meaning, if you have multiple shifts, then there is a corresponding safety officer in that shift. Diba? Dapat meron. Wala kang shift na walang safety officer. At wala ka ring shift na walang OH personnel. Why? Look at the behavior of Dole. Okay. Every time an accident happens, lalo na pag fatal, major accident, every time it happens, the first two questions would be, nasaan ang safety officer na mangyari? Nasaan yung OH personnel na mangyari? So which would mean any given time, you need to have a designated SO, safety officer, and a qualified occupational health personnel. So if you have multiple shifts, this has to be done on a per shift basis. Okay. Meron ng there was this, ito 4A nangyari to, no? Nag-consult sa akin yung isang kumpanya kasi meron siyang 50 workers now. Biyak yung 50 workers niya. Tig 25, 2 shifts. 25 sa first shift, 25 sa second shift. So 50 ang total. Meron lang siyang isang SO3. So yun ang, nung na-inspect siya, isang SO3 lang. Hindi daw siya initial ng violation ng LOLE. Sabi ko sa kanya, siguro naging mabait lang sa yung labor inspector. Pero the point is this, kung meron kang 2 shifts, tig 25, sabihin natin, ang total, based the matrix, 1 SO3. The point is this, saan mo ilalagay yung SO1 mo, ay yung SO3 mo? Sa first o second shift. So ngayon, hulaan mo na. Saan ka bang shift na magkakaroon ng aksidente para doon mo ilalagay yung SO3 mo? So hindi pwede, di ba? Hindi pwede. Paano nilagay mo yung SO3 mo sa first shift? Naka-aksidente ka sa second shift. Ayun, ang tanong pa rin, nasa ng safety officer nang mangyari aksidente? So this has to be done on a shift basis. Okay, so example lang tayo. Let's say I have 150 workers. Okay, 150 high risk. Ang categorization ng establishment is high risk. Ako yung principal company. I have 150. 150 would mean number of workers. 150 would mean inclusive of my service contractors. So meron din akong janitorial, meron din ako security agency, security guard. So I have 150 high risk ang establishment ko. I need to have 1 SO2, 1 SO2, and 1 SO3. That's for me to put up as principal company. Then I have a janitorial service. I hired a janitorial service. And they are 8. 8 sila, nakamobilize sa akin. Again, they adopt my risk category. High risk ako, so high risk din sila. Sa akin sila nakamobilize. So with 8 employees, so si janitorial, meron siyang dapat SO2. Para sa employees niya, si janitorial. So, ganun din si security agency. Si security agency, meron siyang 8 din na security guards. So, nakamobilize sa akin. Then, dapat meron din siyang isang SO2. Diba? So, each of the contractor, okay, should have their own workforce, their safety officer for their own workforce. And as we move down, okay, you realize as we move down, dumadami yung requirements for safety officer at sa mga safety officers. Pero ito lang, let me also highlight this. You can actually stop at SO3. Okay, look, the more employees that you have, kapag low risk ka, if you have much more, isang SO3. Kapag medium risk ka, isang SO3 or SO4. Pag high risk ka, isang SO3 or SO4. What is this frame telling us? You can actually stop at SO3. Di ba? Hindi mo kailangan mag-designate ng SO4. Basta may SO3 ka, okay, then that should be enough. Di ba? That should be enough. Unless you have someone who really has the qualification of SO4. So, ang ginawa ng IRR, naglatag siya ng qualification ng SO4. Because if it comes to a situation na meron ka isang very much qualified na individual, okay, more than the SO3 ang credentials niya, then again, but nothing also stops you in designating the guy as SO4. Okay, so this is the statement. In the case of contractor or subcontractor, at least one safety officer must be deployed at each specific area of operation. Sinabi nga dito, each specific area of operations, but it was never defined. The IR did not define what is what is a specific area of operations, diba? To oversee the management of the OS program of its own workforce. So malinaw, bawat contractor, service contractor, meron sariling safety officer for their own workforce. Okay, At the time that this law came about and the IRR also was issued, it was still a situation na wala ka pang mga qualified na SO3, di ba? Kasi ang sinasabi sa SO3, dapat meron kang 40 hours na booster course plus additional 48 hours plus 2 years of experience. So it could happen in the past when this was just starting na wala pang qualified na safety officers yung mga kumpanya. So binigyan ng alternative to compliance. So sinabi dito, in the event na wala ka pa ng mga yon, you can actually engage an accredited consultant for a maximum period of 1 year. Why? The accredited consultant's responsibility is to capacitate the company and the individual so they would comply with the requirement on safety officer. So sinabi dito, kung wala pa, okay, pwede ka muna mag-engage ng accredited post consultant. But our point really is, why don't you just develop your people, capacitate them so they can be your safety officers, di ba? You don't need an external individual for this. If only you can capacitate your own individuals. Okay, so mapapansin nyo rin sa safety officer, wala nang sinabing part-time o full-time. Wala na. But the situation remains that any given time, you need to have an SO, a safety officer, right there in your workplace. Hindi pwedeng wala. Okay. Pero dito sa occupational health personnel, there's still mention of part-time or full-time. Part-time would mean 4 hours in a day, 3 days in a week. Full-time would mean 8 hours in a day, 5 to 6 days in a week. Okay, so yan yung I've already mentioned this. Those are the training requirements for our occupational health personnel. Okay, now this is the mobilization now. Okay, so look, the categories have changed. Kanina we have 3 categories. We have 3 columns: low, medium, and high. Okay, ngayon low risk pinagsama na, combined na ang medium to high. So let me go back to my earlier example. Let's say 150 workers dito. Ako as principal company, I need to put up 2 first aiders, 1 full-time OH nurse, 1 part-time OH dentist, and 1 part-time OH physician. Yun ang responsibility as principal with 150 total workers. Okay, so ngayon, paano yung mga subcontractor? So ang sinasabi dito, and we also promote this to the service contractors, dapat meron man lang silang first aider. So kung merong bolilyaso sa mga tao nila, hindi na sila magre-rely doon sa first aiders ni principal company. Meron na silang sariling first aiders. Okay, as we move down, nadadagdagan din yung OH personnel. Okay, as to facilities, okay, so ganun din, So low, tapos separate category, medium to high. So many of you probably you have clinics, Okay, so let's say let's look at the requirement of clinics. Okay, ang sinasabi dito, up to 500 total workers, you're gonna have 2 bed capacities in the clinic. Let's say if you're a construction project, medium to high risk yan, you have 500 workers in the project, so yung clinic mo can have 2 bed capacities. But as the number of workers is increased, and for every 100 additional thereafter, additional bed capacity. So paano yan? Let's say you're at the peak of your project. Okay, you need to have 1,000. You have 1,000 workers. So how many bed capacities would you need to have in the clinic? Okay, so 2. So first 500. Okay, let's say your resources or yung space mo hindi na kaya additional bed capacities. Maintain 2. But again, you have 1,000 employees. You have 1,000 workers. So 2 for the first 500. Every additional 100 thereafter, isa pa. So that would mean 2 plus 5. You need to have 7. Pero how would Tolil look at it? Okay, you can have 2 in the workplace, in the premises, 2. The alternative to compliance to the additional bed capacities, and because you lack the facilities, That's the point that Dole will look for your MOA with the nearest hospital. So by definition, ang nearest hospital, in practical sense, yung madali mo mararating. Not na maximum of 5 kilometers or maximum of 25 minutes of travel. Ha? Kung anong madali mo mararating dyan, yun ang nearest hospital. Example lang, meron kang hospital, it's just close to 5 kilometers, but it's towards the direction of traffic. Diba? It will take you more than 30 minutes to be there. Eh meron kang isang hospital, opposite direction, which is not in the direction of traffic, which you can reach in 15 minutes. Okay. Eh yun na yung nearest hospital mo, although it's more than 5 kilometers. Okay, so you still remember your reports, ha? Okay, meron pa rin, ha? Meron pa rin tayong sinasubmit na report sa DOLE. Sa WAIR, nadagdagan ng WAIR natin, ano? Kailan nga ba sinasubmit ang WAIR? Yung regular WAIR, it's on or before the 30th of the month. Tama ba ako doon? Hindi. Ang regular WAIR pala, no? Ang regular WAIR is within 30 days after the occurrence of the accident or the disabling accident or injury, right? Yun yung regular WAIR. COVID WAIR, it's it's on the 30th day of the month. Okay, so dalawang WAIR ang sinasabit mo in a month, ano? So nagiging dalawa siya kung meron kang disabling. Okay. Then yung AEDR, nandiyan pa rin yan, ang AEDR sinasabit mo I think towards the end of the year, January 30 or tama ba? Following year pala, January 30 or 31 the following year, and that's your annual exposure data report. Okay. Yung AMR mo naman, sinasubmit yan on or before March 31 the following year. Okay, ito lang ha. So, I mean, in 2019, when you submitted your AMR, kompleto, di ba? You have random drug testing and everything. All of it are inclusive in your AMR. Okay, but there are now parameters which you're not able to do. Diba? I think you need to inform DOLE in your submission. Let's say, magsasubmit ka on or before March 31 the following year. Let's say you haven't done your random drug testing. Sabihin mo lang na hindi pa to follow na lang yung supplemental AMR mo kasi nga there are parameters that you were not able to do yet. Okay? Okay, siguro naman na DOLE will be considerate kasi nga hindi ka naman talaga random drug test with the current situation. Tapos yung meron pa minutes of committee meetings, quarterly pa rin submission. The committee would have to meet on a monthly basis, but the minutes would have to be submitted on a quarterly basis. Okay, the total cost of implementing the duly approved OS program, as I mentioned, integral part of the operation. So part siya ng OPEX, which is annually driven. Okay, I would advise you again to download this department order, Department Order 183 series of 17. Okay, this has not yet been superseded. This is still the inspection process and protocol. Ito pa rin yun. So yung labor inspection process and protocol, ito yan. And it also gives you the timeline. Ito, look, it established these timelines. Pag imminent danger, dapat 1 day, makorek mo. The next day, hindi mo na correct, DOLE would need to penalize you. And if it's imminent danger, DOLE issues the work stoppage. And DOLE needs to either lift or sustain the stoppage order within 72 hours. Any violation on PPE, as I've mentioned, 3 days to comply. On the 4th day, DOLE gets to penalize you. All other infractions or violations not exceeding 90 days. Okay, but this is also how it works in practical sense. When DOLE gets to inspect you, gets to issue the violation during the presentation of compliance, sasabihin niya, you have 1 month to comply. You have this number of days to comply. If I were you, comply. Diba? Although you can ask for extension. Kasi malinaw naman dito sa Department Order 183-17, you can actually have 90 days, so you can apply for extension of deadline. But again, DOLE wants you to comply ASAP. Why? Kasi for you to avoid the higher penalties. Why? In the event you don't get to comply, okay, look at how the computations would go. Sinabi dito, the penalty shall be computed on a per day basis until full compliance reckoned from the date of the notice of violation, meaning the day you were inspected. Or if the issues have been controverted into a labor case, the day the case was served to you. Pag sinabi kasing compliance order, nakadakit na yun sa DOLE as labor case. So kung kailan na-serve sa yung case, that will be, after that will be the day one of the computation, that will be the day one of the computation of penalties. So malaki let's say, nag-request ka ng nag-request, binigyan ka ng DOLE ng 90 days, then hindi ka rin nakakomply, DOLE now gets to gets to conclude it's willful violation. So ipe-penalize ka na. But what would be day one of the computations? The day you were inspected, and that was more than 90 days ago. So let me also be clear, you only get to be penalized if there is willful violation. Malinaw naman, willful violation. Although you've been issued the violations, but you comply within that window of compliance. Naka-comply ka, kahit may violations ka, naka-comply ka, then no penalties. And satisfied ang DOLE sa compliance mo, then no penalties would ever be imposed upon you. Okay, maximum daily penalty is 100,000. So if daily, maximum daily penalties is 100,000. So if you have multiple violations, naging willful ang pag-violate mo, and DOLE gets to penalize you, whatever is excess of 100,000, DOLE gets to take it out. Okay. Then sinabi rin dito, if DOLE regional director would want to use their discretion, they can actually bring down the penalties. Kung hindi naman ganun kagrabe aksidente or maliit ka lang kumpanya, okay, DOLE regional director can use discretion. But if only the regional director wants to use such discretion. Kung hindi niya gagamitin yung discretion, this would be your maximum penalties per day given the infraction or given the violation. So nandiyan Anyway, this is also this is integral to the DO198. If you download the DO198, you also get this matrix. Okay, so it depends on the violation. You get to be penalized on a per day basis. So again, you only get to be penalized if there is willful violation. As long as you can comply within that window of compliance, no penalty is imposed upon you. Okay, so don't be a repeat offender because there's a statement in DO198 for repeat offenders. Let's say, 2019, you were penalized. Wala kang safety officer. Wala kang safety officer 3. Okay, you became a willful violator. So, penalize ka. Then, eventually, you got to comply. 2020 na, inspect ka ulit. Ganun na naman. Wala ka na naman ulit safety officer. Naging willful ulit violation mo. So, hindi na siya 40,000 per day. Kasi 40,000 pag walang safety officer, pag may walang violation, it becomes 40,000 plus 50% of 40,000. That will be the additional penalty for repeat offenders. Ngayon, the matrix earlier gives you the penalties on a per day basis. Penalties per day yon. Ito yung 100,000 per offense. Tatlo lang naman yan. So naglatag siya ng 100,000 one-shot deal. Per offense yan, in case you would be guilty of this. Repeated obstruction. So when would repeated obstruction happen? Let's say DOLE gets to inspect you today. Okay, DOLE labor inspector has the authority. The guy shows to you the credentials. You can even validate. Call the DOLE office. There's always a tracking number to the inspection authority. When the other end of the line, tatanungin ng DOLE, ano yung tracking number dyan sa inspector authority? Ito, ma'am. Ito. Okay, legit yan. So it's a legit inspection operation. You deny the labor inspector access. Okay, that would be obstruction number 1. Don't even think of repeating it because if let's say the DOLE gets to schedule you again for another inspection at hindi mo ulit pinapasok, okay, repeated na yon. That labor inspector gets to recommend a penalty of 100,000. Okay, ito lang don't expect prior notice kasi ang routine inspection ng DOLE, although I think suspended na for the rest of the year, magre-resume ulit yan next year. I just don't know when exactly next year, but DOLE will always suspend inspection prior to Christmas and after the holidays. Okay, labor inspector is vested with the visitorial powers of the DOLE secretary under Article 128 of the Labor Code. Sa Article 128, sinasabi the DOLE secretary can visit any workplace, inspect the workplace, and exact compliance on the whole package of labor law. So that is the visitorial powers of the DOLE secretary, which has been delegated to the regional offices and in the labor inspector. So ang binaviolate mo dito is Article 128 if there is repeated obstruction. Misrepresentation, submit ka ng report sa DOLE. WAIR, AMA, AADR, so zero. Wala kang work-related accidents, injuries, and illnesses. Okay. So whatever you submit to DOLE, it forms part of the database. So sinisync ng DOLE yan, yung information na pinrovide mo, kasama sa database. And always remember, labor inspectors, they have their tablets, they have their gadgets, they can check your submission. So let's say nag-inspect you, prior to inspecting your establishment, na-check niya na yung submissions mo. So sa mga reports mo, zero. Wala kang dineclare na work-related accident, injury, or illness. Then it turns out, when DOLE inspection, nakita niya sa logbook mo, ang dami mong hindi sinubmit as part of your WAIR, as part of your AEDR. Diba? So what happens now? DOLE might construe that as misrepresentation. So given that, you can be penalized with an amount of 100,000. Making retaliatory measures, let's say one of your workers invoke refusal because the guy is afraid that what the situation is imminent danger. Instead of looking at the refusal, you gave the guy the walking papers, di ba? Tinanggal mo siya. He goes to DOLE. Okay, DOLE gets to investigate. DOLE finds out in the investigation there was indeed a basis for invoking the refusal. So DOLE finds out what you did was by and large retaliatory. So DOLE might just fine you with 100,000. Okay, so fines are being collected. At the moment, once the fines are collected, if there's still time in the day, DOLE gets to remit it to the National Treasury. So doon po lahat punta ng nakukolekta ng penalties sa National Treasury po lahat, nire-remit ng DOLE yan. Okay, so again, this law, and of course the law already took effect as early as 2018, yung IRR followed suit. It took effect January 25, 2019. Okay? So yan yung, I'm sure you've been acquainted with the statements of DO 198. It shouldn't be difficult for you to appreciate it better, and when things get to be a little more, hindi na nga normal, but if ever, by next year, babalik na rin ng DOLE sa regulatory approach na, you now have the window to look at how you can better comply with the existing safety standards, and of course with this DOLE Department Order 198-18. Yun lang po, at marami pong salamat sa inyong lahat. Yes, Neil. May mga tanong po ba? Tingnan ko lang sa chat box. Neil, nakamute ka ata.
Okay, so thank you very much, Sir Jomar.
Okay.
So Ma'am Marnie will lead the questions together with the panelists. Ma'am Marns?
Talaga si Sir Nilo. Unang-una po, pasalamat natin kay Boss Jomar. Maraming salamat po, sir, sa time. Yes, and this session is very, very well appreciated. Marami po tayong participants. And before we'll go to the question and answer portions, we'd like to acknowledge yung ating mga participants, Sir Neil, no? So umabot tayo ng more than 400. Meron pa sa YouTube na nanonood sa atin ngayon. So maraming salamat din po sa oras na binigyan nyo sa session natin ng about compliance natin sa DO 198-18. Ayun, so unang question.
Yes.
Pang Mr. Universe to Boss Jomar.
Okay lang, walang problema.
For safety practitioner candidate who is undergraduate but his experience as safety officer is more than 5 years, is there or will there be a chance na ma-accredit siya as a safety practitioner? Okay. Na hindi na ba kailangan yung i-render yung 10 years sa safety?
Hopefully, they do not change anything in the guidelines with respect to that provision. But actually, the guidelines tell you if you have not graduated from college, okay, yung years mo sa college would have its equivalence. Okay, so it's not exactly 10 years. Kasi sinasabi doon sa existing guidelines 10 years.
10 years.
Pero tinitingnan din niya yung years you've units earned. Units earned, So meron kasi mga, let's say, almost graduate ka na eh. Hindi mo lang talaga, kung sa you lost team along the way, hindi ka naka-graduate. Pero naka 4 years ka. So yung units earned mo, binibilang yan eh. Ibinabangga yan doon sa equivalent. So minsan, hindi 10 years. Lumalabas, 6 years na lang ang kailangan mo. So that's how the existing guidelines have it. Hopefully, kung babaguhin nila, hopefully it becomes favorable. Baka nga babaan nila instead na 10 years, babaan pa nila. Na inclusive pa rin yung units earned mo, ibabangga pa rin sa equivalent siya. Why? Kasi this is the wisdom. The safety officer, the requirement for safety officer, based on the IRR, okay, did not discriminate as to educational attainment, diba? So yung guidelines na yan, although syempre, matter of comparability, pagka graduate ka, may PRC ka, additional POGI points yan. Pero kung hindi ka nakagraduate, pwede pa rin. Ibig sabihin, pwede ka pa rin maging safety officer even in the absence of a diploma. So yung 10 years, sir, kasi may nagtatanong ngayon, hindi talaga 10 years. Kaya pinapasubmit namin ang units earned, di ba? So, ano nga ba yung transcript? Yan, pinapasubmit ang transcript of records.
Okay, so ayun po doon sa hindi pa nakapag-tapos ng college, we still have the chance. Malaki po yung avenue and way for us to be an accredited safety practitioner. Next question, can I ask po Michela to read? Naka-off si Michelle. Si Miss MJ kaya, andyan, available to read the next question?
Yes, ma'am.
Ayan, si Miss Sige, Miss MJ.
Alright. So, for the next question, actually, ito na-answer ko na, but then, tanungin natin. Hi, sir. Does SO2 officers who took Bosch 40 hours training required to take the 10 hours training?
Okay, it shouldn't be the case. Okay, ngayon look at the modules and look at the time when you attended the Bosch. Nung time ba na inattend mo yung Bosch, ito ba ay merong 2 hours of trainers training topics? Diba? Ito ba ay merong risk assessment? Kasi doon sa 10 hours na yan, you're referring to the SO1 module, di ba? Yan 10 hours na yan is inclusive of a session on risk assessment and 2 hours of trainer training topics. So kung wala, ma'am, kung wala yan doon sa initan ng Bosch at ikaw ay i-designate na SO1, you're required to attend the 10 hours training for SO1. So ganun natin titingnan yan kasi in the past, hindi lahat ng Bosch na binibigay ng STOs, merong 2 hours of trainers training topics at merong risk assessment. Ang meron doon, unsafe acts, unsafe conditions, di ba? Yun accident concession Pero walang risk assessment. Kailan lang naging inclusive of risk assessment ang mga Bosch? Recently lang, when this IRR came about.
Okay. Pahabol, Boss Jomar,
Yes.
this is in relation to the question. Nakapagtapos na ng 40 hours training, at saka may training of trainers na sila, yung 3 days.
Yeah.
Need pa rin po ba na kumuha ng 10 hours training?
Okay, the same response. I will have the same response to that. Tignan mo, iset aside lang natin trainers training Okay, so kung may trainers training ka na 2 hours, you've got your 2 hours. So, ngayon, doon sa inatinan mo bang Bosch, is there a session on risk assessment?
Okay.
Kasi those are two
important
items. Those are 2 items new to the curriculum Okay, yung 2 hours na training topics plus the risk assessment. Meron yan doon sa 10 hours meron yan risk assessment. So kung yung Bosch na inatinan mo, accident concession lang na session mo, there is no risk assessment. Then ako, strictly speaking, will require you to attend the 10 hours SO1 training.
Okay, thank you po, Boss Jomar. Next question, please. Can we have Michela to read? Michelle?
Question is, okay. Good afternoon po, sir.
Good afternoon.
Paano if RN and also EMT trained na working as Hello? Yes po.
Yes, naririnig ka namin.
Yes
Paano po
po.
if RN and also EMT trained na working as company nurse, can he or she train the first aiders of the company if he or she is certified by TESDA as a trainer?
Okay. I think, okay, iwalay ulit natin yung konsepto For purposes of gaining knowledge, pwede yan, di ba? Para lang lahat tayo, at least in the company, we have an understanding of what first aid is all about. That's okay. But for purposes of compliance to this IRR and to the knowledge safety and regulations, hindi pwede. Kasi klaro do sa Labor Advisory 490, di ba? Institutional based ang magko-conduct ng training. It could be PRC, DOH, BFP, or TESDA accredited institution. So, hindi individual. So, for purposes of compliance, may respond to you, ma'am, hindi pwede. Hello? Hello?
Hello, yes sir.
Yes.
Thank
Oh,
you
yan.
po. Thank you,
Okay.
Thank you, Boss Jomar, dun sa pagsagot ng question na yan. The next question.
Marnie, sagutin ko lang to Nakikita ko, sir, is the interpretation of risk dependent on the amount of employees exposed? Kasi paano po kapag tatlo ang work environment sa isang company, Okay, ganito yung dami ng empleyado, okay, doon siya sa severity, probability, severity, doon siya sa severity part, di ba? So, the severity would vary also depending on the number of employees. So, mas malaki, mas marami na exposed na empleyado, mas mataas ang severity mo. Yes, definitely. Kasama sa risk assessment ang dami ng mga empleyado. Yes, Marnie.
Tama po. Yeah, tama po yon. So, factor po talaga. The more workers are in the workplace, the higher the risk. Diba? It contributes to the risk. Thank you po. The next question is, basahin ko po dito, Boss Jomar. Nakiusap po talaga to. Tumawag pa siya. Basahin ko na yung question niya. Okay. Kindly ask po, galing kay Sir Gerard Pang from Cebu. Kindly ask po, who else is accredited the first aid provider aside from the Philippine Red Cross?
I think it's part of the presentation. Aside from the Philippine Red Cross,
yung TESDA
Department of Health, the Bureau of Fire, and TESDA accredited institutions providing EMS.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you po. Ayun, Sir Gerard, nasagot na po yung tanong. Next question, can I ask Sir Alfredo po to read?
Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes, Sir Alfredo, yes, sir. Okay, sir, pakibasa po ng next question.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Naririnig ka namin.
Go ahead, sir.
Parang hindi ko nakikita yung question.
Sige, si Sir Fritz na lang.
Actually,
sir,
excuse me. May personal question kasi ako eh. Okay lang?
Yes.
Kasi I'm working abroad here in Japan. Nag-work din ako sa Pilipinas for how many years then. And then, pag-uwi ba namin sa Pilipinas maging accredited, pwede ba, paano yung process na maging accredited kami ng OSH sa Pilipinas? Most of our experience are abroad. Kasi actually marami kaming tanong tungkol sa ganito, yung mga nasa abroad na safety officer or safety manager or whatever. Ano po yung process na sana naman yung mga OFW na safety officers na nag-work sa abroad, maging madali sa kanila yung pagpapa-accredit. Ano po may tutulong ng department para sa ating mga nasa working abroad na halimbawa because of this pandemic, gusto na umuwi, matulungan din sila ng department.
Okay. Yes, sir. Ever since na nag-start ang accreditation, OFWs can who are already returning for good can pursue accreditation. In fact, when the accreditation was still with the regional offices, pag OFW ka, ang accreditation mo goes to the Bureau of Working Conditions. So nung nalipat na yung accreditation sa OSHC, nag-accredit pa rin basta OFW. So again, when we talk about experience, okay, it did not discriminate as to where you got your experience. It could be local, it could be international or abroad. Pwede, sir. Okay. Just ang problema lang natin dito is the validation part, di ba? So you
Yes.
you may want to have your contracts na kung saan nakastipulate yung responsibilities mo sa tenant or any certification issued by the company that these are responsibilities, you may want it to pass your document sa konsulada, 'di ba? Sa consulate or sa Philippine Overseas Labor Office, 'di ba? Para matatakan nila 'yan.
Okay.
So pagka ganyan at ipinesent mo sa OSHC, may tatak ng konsulada, definitely yung experience na 'yan legit 'yan kasi sinertify mismo ng Philippine Overseas Labor Office and the consulate. Ngayon, pero as to trainings, okay, training should still come. Okay, you have definitely you have good trainings taken from abroad and from various providers. Pero pagdating kasi dito, just to explain why nire-require pa rin yung training dito. Why? Because the trainings here are anchored to our national regulations. Diba? You may have good practices abroad, pero syempre, pag nag-practice ka na dito, okay, it has to be within the domain or within the scope of our national regulations. Kaya nire-require pa rin kayo to attend the prescribed training. Pero as to experience, sir, okay, I'm assuring you, even at this point, what you have gained, the experience you've gained abroad will definitely be considered as part of your experience when you are finally evaluated as to your qualification to be accredited as OSH practitioner.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah,
Okay.
Sir Alfredo,
Thank you,
if
Ma'am
I
Arnie.
may, thank you, sir. If I
Yeah.
may, marami po tayong mga returning OFWs po na na-accredit na, no?
Yeah.
Considering the experience and then they also got the trainings. Tama po yung sinasabi ni Boss Jomar kasi importante po alam natin ano ba yung batas, ano yung regulations at the national level. So with that, plus your experience na malawak din doon sa labas, then malaki po talaga yung chance of you being accredited as OSH practitioner. Thank you po. Next question,
Thank you.
can I ask Sir Patrick? Yung question po ni Miss Catherine.
Okay. Good afternoon, Sir Jomar, Boss Jomar. Good afternoon
Yes,
po.
good afternoon.
Coming from Miss Catherine Joy Habal, can we give her a tip to make a high rack regarding for moving objects, baka moving equipment po ito? Or what tips you can give us to start our high rack?
Well, if you're moving objects, di ba, from what point to what point? Point of origin to point of destination, di ba? Then tignan mo yung mga dadaanan, obstruction left and right, even the elevation, there might be uneven surfaces. And then, of course, tignan mo rin, what would you use to move these objects? Is it, of course, we would always recommend, don't do it by manually, ano? If you can have carts and everything to assist in the moving of objects, then that would ensure that you can refrain the workers from coming in contact with the hazards. But of course, the weight of the objects, their size, their dimensions, lahat na integrate mo di ba? So even on a per piece basis, kaya nga when you do high rack in moving objects, tignan mo per piraso, ano yung i-move mo from what point what point to what point, di ba? Yung origin, destination. Tingnan mo rin ano yung safest way of doing it, di ba? If it's inevitable that you need to do it manually, manual lifting, then we need to observe. We need to observe the proper lifting of objects when we do manual lifting. Yan, tingnan mo rin if you're moving chemicals, nag-ano rin depende sir I mean it would there would be a lot of factors yun na kung ano yung i-move mo, kung saan mo gagalawin, ano yung means ng paggalaw mo at kung saan mo idadaan. Always find the high rack will provide you the safest way of doing it.
Thank you very much, Sir Jomar. Miss Marnie, nakamute ka po. Nakamute ka, Miss Marnie.
Thank you, thank you. Very active yung ating mga listeners, mga participants. Ang dami mga questions. Try natin na sagutin to lahat. We still have about 82 questions at hand. Ayan, Boss Jomar. Talagang sulit-sulit.
dito ba tayo matutulog ngayong gabi?
Ayan nga. Next question, Sir Noel. Can you read, please, the next question from Sir... kanina ba yung next na question nito?
Okay, Sir Wesley Ayers.
Wesley, yeah. Wesley
Okay,
Ayers.
okay, Sir Wesley, Sir Jomar, ang tanong
Yes.
niya po ay, to upgrade from OSH practitioner to OSH consultant, how can I get two specialization required by OSH standard? Is it accredited twice as OSH practitioner, but different specialization or by experience only?
Okay. Okay, yung konsepto kasi, no? Okay. Tingnan nyo, there's in the procedural guidelines, there is an attachment of the different specialization. It's really a wide array of specializations that you can have. Enumeration lang naman yun but there could be more. So don't the others, ang feeling nila, ang specialization, let's say, you have an OSH practitioner in construction and being an OSH practitioner in manufacturing, hindi sector-based ang specialization. It could be expertise based, like you're an expert in accident investigation, you're an expert in training, diba? You're an expert in confined spaces. So tignan nyo sa procedural guidelines, kung hindi nila babaguhin o baka dagdagan pa nila, there is a deep list of specializations. Hindi siya sector based, it could be expertise based.
Thank you very much, Engineer Jomar.
Okay.
Very precise and simplified yung ating response sa ano. So, Sir Wesley, thank you po.
Ayan. That is very relevant. No? And marami po nagtatanong kasi niyan, Boss Jomar, sa accreditation daw. Kasi nakita kasi nga talaga doon sa guidelines is at least 2 specializations. So the participants really would ask, or those who would be interested to have themselves accredited is, kailangan bang ma-accredit kami, may specialization din sa construction or sa manufacturing or sa transport for them to be accredited. And at least now, it's being clarified na it's not based on the sector, but on our expertise. So you might be in the manufacturing, pero dalawang field of expertise yung meron
exactly.
tayo.
You're into manufacturing, you're into chemicals, di ba?
Yes.
You're into
emergency response.
Yeah, emergency response. Those are expertise which have found its way dun sa deep list of expert mga specializations.
Okay, thank you po. So next question, Ms. Mahalia, can I please request na basahin po natin yung next question? Is she in? Wala, sige. Basahin ko na lang po to Regarding the occupational dentist, coming from an anonymous attendee. Kapag wala po kami noon, pero meron naman kaming service provider sa health card na covered yung dental services, is pwede na po ba siya as our dentist sa company po?
Okay. Even in the IRR, it mentions you need not provide an occupational dentist as long as you have an agreement with the nearest dental service. Ngayon, if you have an HMO, okay, ito lang you need to look at your contracts with the HMO. Yung bang kontrata nyo with them, the terms of reference, will it cover what has been stated in the standards as the responsibility of an occupational health dentist? So that's the way to do it. So look at the contracts with the HMO. If it covers the provisions under Rule 1960, okay, good tayo dyan. Or if you have the nearest dental service, good din tayo dyan. As long as you have this, you need not have an occupational health dentist stationed in the premises.
Ayan, nasagot na po yung tanong. Next question. Sir Gary, can you please read the question po? Ni Sir Darwin?
Darwin, okay. Good afternoon, ma'am, and Sir Jomar.
Yes,
I'm
good
Gary.
afternoon.
I'm Gary. Question from Darwin Andres, no? Question on the advanced specialized training, kailangan ba from OSHC or STO lang? How about the OS-related international training?
Okay. Malinaw kasi doon sa safety officer trained by DOLE its accredited training organization. Okay. Ito ngayon okay. And let me also tell you this. There was a point when OSHC wrote a group of OFWs. Okay. Sinabi ng OSHC doon, okay, kung meron kang Bosch, NIOSH,
Ayos,
Bosch,
ayos.
ayos, ni Bosch, ayos, ano pa ba isa?
Ni boss ayos lang sir
Ni,
naman.
hindi, tatlo
Boss,
yan eh. Tatlo yan ha. OSHA, I think.
O siya.
Oo, siya.
Tatlo, yung tatlong yon. Sinabi doon ng OSHC, okay, OFWs, kung meron ka nito, okay, i-consider yan. So, what happened there? Nung nag-meeting kami noon, sabi ko, if we're doing this for OFWs, there should be uniform application. So, if someone who is not OFW comes to us with a NIBOS, ayos, OSHA, then dapat ganun din yan for the additional OSH training. But still, required pa rin yung prescribed na 40-hour OSH. Yung NIBOS, ayos, OSHA would only be part of the additional OSH.
Sige Sir Jomar, salamat.
Okay.
Thank you po, Boss Jomar. Next question, please. Sir Julius, can you read the next question, please? Andiyan ba si Sir Julius? Wala, sige. The next question is actually related din doon sa discuss ni Boss Jomar about the 8 hours training na can be done staggered. Pero ang question again ni Sir Wesley is, can I conduct 8-hour mandatory OSH training for 2 days, 4 hours each day?
Yeah, sure. Sinabi naman, there's already a Bureau of Working Good Conditions opinion on the matter. It can be staggered. 4 hours, it's session yan. Bakit hindi?
Yes.
As long as it's, you should be able to cover all employees. Yun naman ang malinaw doon for all employees.
At during a compensable day, gagawin ang training.
Pagka if you do it on a Saturday, which is not their work day, you need to compensate them. Diba?
Yes. Ayun. Next question. Basahin ko lang din po muna. Training acquired overseas for specialization but not listed in any accredited is considered valid? Baka wala po doon sa listahan ng mga trainings na i-consider pero kinuha niya abroad. Valid din ba ito doon sa accreditation?
Okay. Yes, it will form part of the 320 hours of training and related experiences. Doon siya papasok, di ba? Pag nagpa-accredit ka as a consultant, pero as practitioner, ang kailangan mo lang naman, minimum requirement, 40 hours plus 48 hours of additional training. Yung 40 hours na yun has to come from OSHC or STOs. That 48 hours ganun din has to come from OSHC or STOs. So yun, dapat magaling sa OSHC or STOs kung mag-accredit kang, papa-accredit kang practitioner. Pero let's say practitioner ka na, nag-abroad ka, ngayon naka 4 years ka na, the way it is now, 4 years ka na practitioner, you're now eligible, given the number of years, you're now eligible to apply for accreditation as OSH consultant. Ngayon, saan papasok yung trainings mo abroad on safety net? So, papasok na siya. Hindi siya papasok dun sa 40, hindi siya papasok sa 80. Kasi 80 yan, hindi ba? Yung 80 sa OSH yan or STOs yan, yung 80. So, saan papasok yung trainings mo abroad? Dun sa 320 of training and related experiences. Doon sa 320 hours, doon papasok yan.
Yan, sige. So, next question. Sino po yung pwedeng magbasa ng next question? Sir Fitz, can you read the next question po?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. The next question is coming from anonymous attendee. Paano po nire-review ang application ng safety practitioner? I have a friend na wala pang 3 years na siya sa company as an engineer in charge. Nag-resign as a safety officer sa company nila. After that, designate siya as a safety officer. Pinag-training siya ng mga training ng safety, then wala pang 1 year, nag-apply siya ng safety practitioner. Sa COE niya, nilagay ng HR na 3 years siya as a safety officer sa company nila, kaya nakapasa siya as a required years of experience.
Okay, I think hindi nakapasa, hindi siya, I mean, sabihin na natin, wag naman sana na naging spurious yung document niya. na 3 years. Palagay ko, kinonsider din yung experience niya. Abroad ka mo, no, sir? Experience niya sa abroad, ano?
Yes, sir.
So, I
May
think,
experience din sa abroad.
okay, it was included also kasi ang sinasabi lang dito, 2 years of experience. So, palagay ko, sinama na rin ng OSHC yun. Baka naman,
I think, sir,
the way I
pumasok
see
din
it,
yun dun sa
the way I see it, baka sinertify ng HR na 3 years, baka sinama na rin ng HR yung experience niya abroad, di ba? So which would mean, legit pa rin yung document niya, baka na-convince niya rin yung HR na itong experience niya sa abroad can be inclusive of the total years of experience na pwedeng i-certify nung local na locally nung HR dito. So hindi natin masyado alam yung istorya, but the mere fact na na-accredit siya, I think it goes without saying, na-scrutinize naman ng OSHC yung experience.
I think, sir, pumasok din yung other trainings niya.
Yeah,
no? To count
pumasok
with
din yung other
the
trainings.
experience in abroad.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Miss Marnie, wala po kayong mic.
Kalimutan ko ulit. Yung question po, sir, kay JR Barnadas.
Yeah.
Pero kanina parang nasagot na din to eh. For non-high hazard establishment, how frequent is the minimum period to conduct safety orientation for workers?
Okay, ganito yan if the question refers to the mandatory OSH seminar for employees, again, it's a one-shot deal. Walang sinabi sa frequency eh. Pag na-conduct mo na to, yung using the 8-hour module, the prescribed course outline, pag na-conduct mo na to, good na yan. So, i-conduct mo lang ulit ito pag meron kang new entrants, merong bagong pumasok sa kumpanya, again, bibigyan mo sila ng mandatory one-day OSH seminar. Diba? Kasi, tas kung meron naman umalis sa kumpanya, let's say, umalis ang isang individual sa kumpanya, kung saan man siya lilipat na kung saan man siya lilipat na kumpanya, dahil new entrant siya, bibigyan siya ng one-day mandatory ng kumpanya na yon. So, if the question refers to that mandatory one-day OSH seminar for all employees, okay, walang sinabi sa frequency. So, liberally, we can interpret it to mean one-shot deal.
Okay, thank you po, Ms. Jomar.
Pero ito lang, Marnie, dugtungan
yes,
ko lang.
Okay, yes po.
Dito sa COVID-19, nag-require. So, ibig sabihin, kung nagawa mo na to, 8 hours, nagawa mo na prior to the pandemic, dito sa supplemental guidelines, saka sa interim guidelines ng DTI, di-require ka ng mandatory COVID-19 prevention and control orientation. So, magbibigay ulit ngayon. This time around, COVID-19 lang ang subject matter mo.
Yes, tama po yan because just like in our case, nagkaroon na kami ng mga sessions, 8 hours mandatory training. And then during the pandemic, nag-lockdown, and then now the workers are coming back. No? So nagkaroon tayo ng after the testing, mayroon tayong onboarding. So doon natin in-orient yung mga incoming and other employees on COVID-19. Yep. Yun. So Ms. MG, can you please read the question po ni Sir Christian Ian Chavez?
Alright po. Okay. From Christian Ian Chavez, paano po pag yung worker ng subcon nag-refuse to work on Sunday? Pwede po ba yun kahit pinipilit ng subcon sila? Siguro po sabi, kahit pinipilit ng main con sila. Ano po protection ng worker para di sila i-terminate?
Okay. Mukhang hindi na safe and health yan. pero ganito nga, okay. Nag-establish kasi ang mga workplaces, lalo na sa construction, ng rest day ng mga workers. So, base sa regulation, okay, labor laws, you can have your workers work straight for 6 days. But on the 7th day, kahit anong araw pumatak yan, let's say, nagtrabaho siya Monday to Saturday, 6 days. Sunday is the established rest day. Kung nagtrabaho siya Tuesday to Sunday, Monday is the established rest day. So the question is this, yung bang kanyang Sunday na yan ay established rest day. Okay, so kung established rest day yon, talagang rest day niya dapat yon. Kung talagang hindi mo siya dapat pagtrabahoin kasi pag pinagtrabaho mo siya, bibigyan mo siya ng premium. Pero ganito rin naman yon, 'di ba? Karapatan ng worker na umabsent, 'di ba? Kaya nga meron siyang SIL, Service Incentive Leave na 5 days, doon i-charge yon. So hindi mo siya pwedeng mapilit for all masama ang pakiramdam niya, lalo na construction. So hindi mo siya pwedeng pilitin na magtrabaho on a day na ayaw niya magtrabaho. So ngayon ganito lang yan. Siyempre, you need to offer reasons, 'di ba? Bakit mo ayaw magtrabaho? Lalo na nagra-rush ng trabaho, 'di ba? So kung basta lahat tayo dapat nagtrabaho. So I think there should be a valid reason. On the side of the worker, there should be a valid reason as well kung bakit ayaw mo magtrabaho, kasi you were hired eh. You were hired to work, let's say, for 6 days. Ito yung mga terms of reference mo. Pag umabsent ka, sino gagawa niyan, 'di ba? So again, 'di ba? So again, papasok dito yung issue. Ano ba yung rason kung bakit mo ayaw magtrabaho? And of course, the company will subject this to assessment and investigation. Kasi, 'di ba? There is always the concept of a wall eh. Absence without leave, 'di ba? Absence without leave. Nag-file ka ba ng leave prior to that na hindi ka magtatrabaho that day? Tapos o talagang ayaw mo lang magtrabaho, hindi ka nag-report, hindi ka nagpakita. So merong rules din on absence without leave. So the better thing mag-usap, 'di ba? The better thing mag-usap, 'di ba? Okay, the better thing mag-usap para hindi na mag-mature yan hindi na mag-translate into a bigger issue.
Naka-mute ka po, Miss Marnie. Naka-mute ka, Miss Marnie.
Yung mic mo man.
Tore, naka-mute. Hanggang alas 4 lang tayo, Boss Omar.
Hindi,
I assure you.
Okay lang.
So,
okay lang kahit hanggang alas 4 ng madaling araw.
alas 4 na araw. Lumampas na po tayo. One last question. Sinong gustong humirit from the other panelists?
Okay, from Christopher Fuentes, ma'am.
Sige po.
Sir, in terms of PPE po, pag nag-outsource po kayo ng manpower, tapos with given time po na binigay nyo to provide PPE sa manpower nila, tapos di po sila nakapag-provide, ano po pwedeng action natin?
Okay. So ganito, kasama ba sa kontrata ng manpower yung PPE? Nakasakay ba sa kontrata? So kung kanino, ganito yan kung ako'y nakipagkontrata sa principal, nandun ba yung PPE component sa kontrata, sa contract price? Kung nandun yun, ako as manpower, akong dapat mag-provide. Pero kung hindi na ilagay doon, dapat si principal lang mag-provide. Pero syempre, pagka nag-inspect ang dole, walang PPE, may violation. Si manpower, direct employer eh. Okay, pagka yan ay naging larger issue, naging kaso, i-implead na ngayon si principal. Diba? So, dapat lang malinaw dapat malinaw kung nagpa-contract out ka ng trabaho at required ang paggamit ng PPE. Okay, dapat kasama kung si manpower o si service contractor ang magpro-provide ng PPE, dapat naka-integrate sa cost o sa contract price ang personal protective equipment. Kung hindi man at nag-provide si service contractor o si manpower, dapat mai-bill niya to sa principal. So siguro among the items na kinaklaro dapat yan sa kontrata pa lang as to provision of PPE kasi siyempre merong cost implication lang, hindi lang yung PPE naman, lalo na kung mababa yung serbisyo, hindi lang one shot deal yan, di ba? Meron pang replenishment yan. So ayun part dapat siya ng may cost implication yan doon sa contract price.
Thank you, Boss Jomar. And then in addition to that, ngayon yung COVID, no? Yung COVID testing. Aside from the PPE, kasama siya sa project cost, how about the COVID testing now?
Okay, sa COVID testing kasi may packages ang PhilHealth, Although syempre pagka nilinaw din naman ng DOH, pagka sa COVID, pagka nag-symptoms, yun lang ipapatest mo. Ngayon pag pinatest mo, syempre lalo na kung inuulugan mo naman PhilHealth niyan, di ba? Merong amount chargeable to PhilHealth. Ang ano lang dito talaga, hindi dapat kung ito yung work-related again, let me emphasize that work-related. Hindi dapat ang cost ito hindi dapat mag-redound. Hindi dapat ma-charge to doon sa employee concern.
Sa mga employees. Okay. Marami pang
Marms,
question na Sir Neil, hirit.
Hirit ko lang tong sa YouTube na tanong.
Sige po.
Yung mga naka-live stream sa YouTube. Yung isang tanong, ito kasi always talaga na-encounter natin to as a trainer. Sir Jomar.
Yes.
Yung mga gustong mag-apply as OSH practitioner, kaso yung kanyang educational qualification ay high school graduate. Tapos meron na siyang experience for 8 years.
Okay.
So I think medyo gray area kasi yan with regard to the procedural guidelines. Pero kung titingnan natin no, on the legal basis mismo, definitely hindi on my personal opinion, Sir Jomar, no, with my knowledge sa law, no. Ayan. Ano ba yung magiging approach natin, Sir Jomar, no?
Okay, ang point mo, hindi siya graduate, 'di ba? So
Yes,
hindi siya
yes.
graduate, meron siyang 8 years of experience, 'di ba?
Yes, complete
Okay.
na with the trainings.
Okay, so can he or she apply for accreditation as practitioner? So papasok din yung 40 plus 48 doon, ha? Then sinabi lang naman dito 2 years of experience. Pero meron sa procedure guidelines, pagka hindi ka graduate 10 years of experience. As I have explained earlier, pinagsasabit namin ng transcript of records. Tinitingnan namin, binibilang namin isa-isa yung units earned in college. Kasi merong matrix of equivalence yan sa guidelines, sa procedural guidelines. Ilang units ang earned in college, ito ang years of experience na kailangan lang. For all you know, baka yung 8 years would more than suffice. Kasi meron siyang, kung may sasabit niya yung transcript, at meron siyang units earned in college, mabababaan pa yung 10 years na yun. Baka ultimately, kung papasok or sobra pa yung 8 years of experience niya. So, pwede siyang ma-accredit. Bakit hindi? Basta ma-satisfy niya yung minimum requirements na yun.
Pero kung high school graduate, Sir Jomar?
Ay, sorry. High school graduate, Sorry. Okay. Kung high school graduate, definitely 10 years. Okay, ngayon, 10 years. So, the point is, meron na siyang 8 years. Okay. So, may training. Okay. Appreciation ng documents na ngayon. So, meron din sinabi sa procedural guidelines, di ba? Hours of training can be converted into 1 year of experience. 80 hours, di ba? 80 hours of training can be converted into 1 year of experience. So, doon sa anggulong yun, doon niya ilalaban kasi kulang na lang siya ng 2 years of experience, di ba? So tingnan niya kung meron siyang maisasalang na 160 hours na centennial training, okay? Then tingnan natin kung paano appreciate nung mag-review ng documents niya. Okay, so mahalaga sana na ma-present niya lahat ng mga evidence, itong mga proofs na to Okay, lahat ng experience niya, may present niya and the experience should amount to 8 years. Lahat ng training niya na centennial related, may present niya para ma-offset to yung hours of training can offset the lacking years of experience. Pwede naman, I think in the past, Neil, ganito, no? In the past, we have accredited individuals who have not really gone to college. Pero ang lawak na na-experience nila sa safety and health, eventually, naging practitioner sila. So yun nga, no? Hindi siya totally nag-discriminate as to education.
Yes.
Nag-require lang siya ng mas maraming years of experience when it's a situation na lesser ang education mo and the more experience is required. But in that sense, I would still say hindi siya totally nag-discriminate as to education.
Ayun. Sir Jomar, last question, medyo medyo mabahaba yung kanyang litana dito. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to be part of this afternoon session. I believe ito ay isang practitioner na. You mentioned a while ago from previous slides, para maging OSH consultant, example, 4 years as OSH practitioner, undergone 40 hours training, 80 hours advanced specialized training, prescribed by STO Dole, 480 hours related training. In short, Sir Jomar, no, kumbaga, na-undergone niya na to lahat.
Oh, yeah.
My question is, what if na-provide ko lahat the above-mentioned requirements and answered most related OSH questions from the panelists? The only thing is, ang mismong panelist na nag-interview sa akin ay may personal na galit sa ilang nag-endorse sa akin para tumulong mag-apply bilang OSH consultant. Ito po ba ay makakaapekto sa result ng application ko? Salamat po, sir, just for clarification.
Ilalim ang hugot nun.
Parang gusto kong makakwentuhan yun.
Oo nga, Boss Jomar, kailangan mainit na kape.
Okay, ganito, government people, you need to exercise prudence, you need to exercise neutrality, and of course, integrity, wala tayong magagawa. Public would seek endorsement elsewhere, di ba? Kasi ang feeling lagi ng isang publiko, di ba, na makakatuloy endorsement, don't take it against the person. Ang nangyayari rin sa akin nangyayari yan eh. An applicant would come with an endorsement coming from a politico. I don't take it against the person, di ba? I just go over the documents. If indeed the person is qualified, then he gets his accreditation. He isolate. A government person should be able to isolate such things. So hopefully kung sino man yung nire-refer ng person takes it that way, you isolate the endorsement, di ba? Huwag mong tingnan yun. Look at the guy, look at his credentials. There is also the interview, di ba? Yung nga sinasabi ko sa mga taga-OSHC, there is still the interview. That is the final validation for you to even say whether or not qualified your individual or not. Huwag mo kagad itapon yung dokumento niya dahil based on documents, ito lang pinag-aralan niya, ito lang ang yan. Still give the person the benefit of the doubt, make him present himself to the interview. And you realize later, ang galing-galing pala. Maraming ganung pagkakataon, pag tinignan mo yung dokumento, talagang di ba? Ano ba to? Pero nung na-interview na, mas magaling pa to doon sa ibang kilala ko. So ganun, hopefully kung sino man yung nire-refer niya will not take it against him or her na siya ay na-endorse ng mga ilang tao. Endorsement should not be taken against that person.
Okay, so Marnie?
So maraming questions po talaga, Sir Neil. Can we go to them siguro na lang after the session kung pwede pa nating sagutin yung mga questions nila because ayun, overtime na tayo kay Boss Jomar. And for those who are wanting to have themselves accredited as OSH practitioner at may mga doubts, I would encourage you to go to the office po ng Occupational Safety and Health Center. We have the regional extension units naman po that we can reach out, no? Kasi dito sa session natin, alam ko, nakita ko, Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. Ayan, si Sir Patrick from Jensen. So Sir Patrick can very well help you doon sa kung ano mga requirements. So go to visit the office po ng DOLE or kung meron namang mga regional extension units ng OSH Center for some other clarifications in terms of accreditation. Sir Neil, I will now turn over the floor, the screen to you for the closing. Maraming salamat po. Maraming salamat sa ating mga participants. Thank you po. Thank you, Boss Jomar. See you.
So, award muna natin. Natin ang ating
Neil, okay lang kasi I'm reading the questions. Marami nga
Marami pa po,
siguro,
actually.
I would recommend we can have another session, if only to answer many of the questions.
Yes, Sir Jomar.
Up to you kasi I think ang daming relevant questions that
po
be clarified. So if I'm free, we can have another session purposely to answer all these queries.
Sir Jomar, advance na kita. December 22.
Sige.
December 22. The OSH programming for the year 2021.
Ayan, block off yung schedule niyo
Baka pwedeng yung mga may tanong ngayon sa session na to, yung mga may tanong, they can be part of that para sagutin ko yung mga tanong nila.
Yes.
Okay.
So bago tayo mag-end, allow me to award this certificate of appreciation. In grateful recognition of the knowledge and his invaluable time shared to us by our guest speaker, the NOSHCOP would like to present this certificate of appreciation to Engineer Jose Maria Isbatino, Deputy Executive Director of the Occupational Safety and Health Center, detailed at the Dole NCR Quezon City Field Office. Once again, we would like to extend Sir Jomar our heartfelt gratitude for accepting our very short notice invitation. Thank you very much, Sir Jomar. And yes, Sir Jomar.
Yeah, thank you very much then sa sa NOSH. Ano mo i-pronounce to? NOSHCOP. Thank you very much sa NOSHCOP. Okay lang. Short notice would just be fine. As long as I mentioned earlier, so as long as I have the time, wala namang problema yun. Basta maganda lang ang connection. Maganda lang internet, no problem.
Yes, Sir Jomar. And also, we would like to extend my gratitude sa ating mga members of the panelists. Start with our Sir Patrick, Patrick James Mayol, Gary Montoya, Sir Noel Mercado, si Ma'am Mahalia Langit, si Ma'am Sheila, si Ma'am MJ, no? Ito, kilalang-kilala ko to, from Bosch to LCM to. Ayan, si Sir Alfredo. And then yung ating actually Sir Jomar, meron tayong former regional director ng Philippine Drug Enforcement Agency.
Okay.
Ngayon one of the panelists. Medyo ano lang yung ano niya, signal kanina, si Sir Julius Navales. And then Fritz Robles, sir, thank you. And then si Sir Jason Ponciano. Okay, so maraming salamat. And of course, to my co-host, si Ma'am Marnie. Ayan. Ayan, si Ma'am Marnie. Okay, lastly, no, we would like to invite our, of course, sa ating mga attendees na nandito ngayon. Marami tayong mga attendees naka-join. Yung iba hindi makapasok because they have this problem about the authentication actually yon, no? Pagka hindi ka makapasok, we require authentication because we protect the data of the participants, no? Kaya we really require authentication. So hindi siya basta-basta makapasok if you don't have that account na validated by Zoom. So in short, you may apply or sign up for free account sa Zoom. No, may free account naman para ma-validate yung inyong email address. Okay? So lastly, no, I'd like to invite you in advance. I'll grab the opportunity na rin. Okay? So ito yung ating by the way, before that, yung ating certificate of attendance as well as for the copy. I believe si Sir Jomar bibigyan tayo ng copy ng kanyang presentation material.
Of course.
Sir Jomar, email na lang.
Oh, sure,
okay,
sure.
So email natin 'yan, no? And for December 22, medyo mahaba-haba to, no? We can accommodate the OSH programming for the year 2021. We are going to discuss fire safety compliance, OSH training, no? OSH training program from the OSH Trainers Association of the Philippines, exit drills programming kasi ito kailangan ma-program natin kung anong mga araw ito, no? And we can discuss as well, no? Anong mga kailangan i-comply ng company. And babalik si Sir Jomar para dito sa OSH Standards Admin and Reportorial Compliance.
Yes, Neil. Neil, isa lang meron lang akong nabasa kasi sa tanong para lang, ito lang kasi baka may mga taga-gobyerno dito, ang tanong nyo, may nabasa kasi akong tanong, bakit walang safety officer sa gobyerno? Ito lang. There's a document issued March 4, 2020. It was signed by DOLE, DOH, and Civil Service Commission. Nire-require ng safety net sa government instrumentality. So kasama na doon ang pagkakaroon ng safety officer. I-download nyo. I think it's in the DOLE and Civil Service website. It's an OSH standards for government workplaces. Meron na since March 4, 2020.
Okay.
Lang Neil, pahabol lang 'yan.
Yan, thank you very much Sir Jomar for that information. Okay, so I think isa na lang ang kailangan nating i-mention. We will be having our online Christmas party after the December 22 webinar. Okay, and earlier, nag-usap kami ni Ma'am Marnie kung pwede sana yung ating mga performers from the Resorts World Manila mag-perform online. So we hope our request will be granted.
Si Sir Noel po mag-perform.
Okay.
Ayan.
Okay, so Sir Jomar, thank you very much Sir Jomar.
Okay, thank you rin. Thank you sa inyong lahat at Merry Christmas sa inyong lahat.
Okay, so thank you and magandang hapon and mabuhay ang NOSHCOP.
Okay, mabuhay ang NOSHCOP. Yeah. Thank
you
you.
po.
Bye-bye.
God bless.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Raymond
po.
Santos, nanood daw siya. Pabati daw sa Raymond.
Raymond.
Sige lang, mga kaibigan natin yan. Okay, bye-bye.
God bless po. God
God
bless.
bless. Bye-bye.
Sir John, thank you. Marnes, thank you.
Thank you po. Thank you, Sir Neil. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Panelist,
Thank you.
Miss MJ, Sir Patrick. Hello,
Thank you.
nice seeing you.